In addition to board games, I love movies, and one of my favorites is Steven Spielberg's Jaws. Since 1994, I've watched the film every 4th of July weekend. This week marked my 28th year in a row doing this, not even counting all the times I saw the film before I began that tradition. So it seems like the right time to look at the 2 to 4 player board game Jaws, designed by Prospero Hall and published by Ravensburger. This isn't the first time Jaws has made its way into board gaming. There's been a bunch of shark-themed games for kids since the film's release, because when I think graphic shark violence, I think kid-friendly. In the mid-70s, there was a dexterity Jaws game by Ideal that played a little like Operation. Later, we saw games like Shark Attack and Shark Bite, and eventually a more mature game, Shark Island, intended for ages 14 and up, which we'll probably talk about at some point on this channel. So how does the new game stack up? We'll take a look. Just a friendly word of warning. This won't be a full rules explanation. My goal today isn't to teach you every single mechanic or tactic in the game, but just to explain the feel and give you a basic idea of how it works, so you can decide if it's right for you and your family or your game group. Ready to check it out? Then please hit like and subscribe, because we're going to need a bigger gaming table. Jaws is a semi-cooperative one-against-many game, meaning that one player will play the shark, and the other players will play Brody, Hooper, and Quint, collectively known as the crew, who work together to try and kill the shark. That's great if you have 4 players. If you have 2 or 3 players, it just means one player will need to control multiple crew members. Jaws is played in a unique 2-act structure that captures the feel of the movie perfectly. Act 1 takes place on Amity Island as Brody, Hooper, and Quint attempt to determine the shark's location and prevent the shark from eating swimmers. The island contains 4 beaches, north, south, east, and west, plus other locations such as Amity Police Station, the mayor's office, the shop, and 2 docks. Each character, including the shark, has unique abilities they can use to help achieve their objective, and which may require the player to be at a certain location in order to use. In Act 1, each round begins with the event phase. The players draw a single event card which causes something to happen, which may or may not help either the players or the shark. The card will also instruct the players to place a certain number of swimmers onto the board at one of the island's 4 beaches. For example, one event card is $3,000 bounty on the shark. We're instructed to place 1 swimmer each at the north and west beaches, and 2 each on the south and east beaches. The card's effect states that the Hooper player can take an extra action this round. Next, we move to the shark phase. As with games like Fury of Dracula or Letters from Whitechapel, the shark's movements are hidden. On his first turn, the shark player will select his starting location and record it. For example, if he starts at location 3, he writes a 3 on the first line of the tracker. Each turn, the shark player may take 3 actions. The available actions are move to an adjacent space or eat a swimmer at the shark's current location. So the shark might choose to spend all of his actions to move 3 spaces while eating no swimmers, or he might eat 3 swimmers without moving, or any combination of the 2. At the end of his turn, the shark player records how many swimmers he ate and at what location, and his new ending location. The shark also has 4 power tokens, which can each be used once per game, but only 1 per turn. These tokens give the shark a super ability. For example, Feeding Frenzy allows the shark to eat all the swimmers at a location with a single action, without having to use separate actions for each swimmer. Along the same lines, Speed Burst allows the shark to move up to 3 spaces as a single action. At the end of his turn, the shark must tell the crew how many swimmers he ate during his turn, if any, whether he tripped any motion sensors, more on this later, and whether he used any of his 4 power tokens. However, he doesn't have to say which power token he used. That token is then set aside for the remainder of the game. If the shark ate any swimmers, he raises the counter on his card by the number eaten. Next, it's the crew phase. Each crew member can take up to 4 actions per turn, with each character having different strengths. For example, Brody can spend an action to move to an adjacent location. If Brody is at a beach with a swimmer, he can spend an action to rescue that swimmer, returning him to the supply. While standing on a beach, Brody can also spend an action to use his binoculars. If the shark is adjacent to that beach, it must reveal itself. If Brody's at the mayor's office or police station, Brody can spend an action to close one of the game's 4 beaches, provided there are no swimmers there, which temporarily prevents new swimmers from being placed at that beach. If he's in the shop, Brody can spend an action to pick up a barrel, but he can only carry 1 barrel at a time. If he's at one of the docks, he can spend an action to drop the barrel, allowing Quint a chance to pick it up later. Quint is in the Orca, sailing crankily around the island in a very entitled way because #boomer or something. He can spend an action to move to an adjacent square or rescue a swimmer who happens to be in his location. If he's at a dock and Brody has managed to drop off a barrel there, Quint can spend an action to load that barrel onto the Orca. Once per turn, assuming he has one, Quint can spend an action to launch a barrel into his space or an adjacent space. If the shark happens to be in that space, the shark must immediately reveal himself. The barrel is attached and is placed on the shark's player board. If the shark isn't in that space, the shot misses, and the barrel remains floating in the water. Quint can spend an action to pick up a floating barrel in his space so he can fire it again on a future turn. However, he might not want to. If he leaves the barrel in the water, it acts as a motion sensor. If the shark ever moves through a space with a motion sensor, he must tell the crew at the end of his turn, at the same time he tells them whether he ate any swimmers. However, he doesn't have to tell them the order in which he did those things. Hooper is also on the water. Unlike Quint, Hooper has a speedboat because #RichKid. This means that Hooper can move up to 2 adjacent water spaces for a single action. Like Brody and Quint, he can also spend an action to rescue any swimmer in his location. For an action, he can pick up floating barrels in the water. And when he's in the same space as Quint, he can spend an action to hand over all barrels he has to him. Hooper also has a rich kid toy, the fish finder. Once per round, Hooper can use the fish finder by placing it in his current location. If the shark is in the same square, he's immediately revealed. If the shark is in an adjacent square, the shark player must state that the shark is nearby, but doesn't reveal his location. If neither is true, the shark player states that the shark isn't nearby. After each player has taken their turn, the round starts over with a new event card. Act 1 continues until either the crew fires 2 barrels into the shark, or the shark eats 9 swimmers. At that point, the game proceeds immediately to Act 2. Depending on how well each team did, they'll be rewarded or hampered in the next stage. Act 2 is a battle to the bitter end. The crew wins if they kill the shark. The shark wins if either he eats all 3 crew members or he completely destroys the orca. Depending on how many swimmers the shark ate in Act 1, the shark and crew will receive a certain number of new ability cards. For example, if the shark ate the maximum of 9 swimmers, the shark receives 10 randomly dealt shark ability cards to use against the players this act, similar to the shark's power tokens from Act 1. If the crew did very well last act and managed to get 2 barrels into the shark before he ate any swimmers, the shark would only get 1 shark ability card, while the crew would get 12 crew cards, in addition to the character-specific gear cards which the crew will always receive. That's a bad day to be a shark, but that's about as unlikely as Mayor Vaughn's anchor suit blazer coming back into style. You'll probably be somewhere in the middle. After receiving the crew cards, the crew players divide them up between themselves however they like. Each crew member starts the act on an orca tile of their choosing. The new resurface cards are shuffled, and the top 3 are dealt face up into the spaces at the bottom of the board. The cards indicate the 3 possible options of how the shark will attack the boat. The shark player must choose one of these options. After he's made his choice, he'll pick the resurface token, A, B, or C, that corresponds to the card slot he wishes to follow. If he wants, the shark may also pick one of his shark ability cards to play this round. The shark player puts the resurface token and the shark ability card, if any, face down in front of him. The crew then prepares. They may strategize together openly. Each crew member will make their best guess about what the shark is going to do. They can move around the ship up to 2 adjacent spaces per turn. They will then select a weapon card from their hand to play and place their targeting circle on the spot where they think the shark will surface. Crew members may also choose to play accessory cards, such as a shark cage or chum, which have beneficial effects and which may disrupt the shark's plan. After all crew members have finalized their selections, the shark will reveal his resurface token. The other resurface cards are discarded, and the shark moves to the selected space. Then resolve crew attacks against the shark first. If a crew member successfully predicted where the shark would be and played an appropriate weapon card, the shark potentially takes damage. The player rolls the amount of dice indicated on the weapon card. If any hits are rolled, the player deals that amount of damage to the shark minus the defense amount indicated on the resurface card, if any. Some player weapons can be attached to the shark and will deal ongoing damage to the shark unless he manages to shake it off through a card effect. After all attacks are resolved, the shark attacks. He can choose to attack any adjacent orca tile. The shark rolls the appropriate number of dice and, if successful, either damages the tile, at which point the tile is flipped over, or destroys that section of the boat completely, at which point the tile is removed from the game. Any crew members who are standing on a tile when it is damaged or destroyed get knocked into the water. When this happens, the shark can attack a player of his choice in the same or an adjacent water space. Roll the number of dice indicated on the resurface card. If any come up as hits, the crew member takes that much damage. A crew member can climb out of the water back onto an adjacent boat tile, but it takes both of their movements to do so. As Act 2 plays out, the boat will likely become smaller as the shark works to dismantle it, and both the crew and the shark will take damage until one side emerges the winner. Be careful, crew members can be killed before the game is over. Overall, Jaws is an extremely thematic adaptation of a great film. And yeah, I know it was a book first, but let's face it, the movie blows it away. I love the 2-act structure, which almost feels like 2 completely different games. In fact, the manual includes instructions if you just want to play one act or the other. And speaking of the manual, it's excellent. A short 12 pages with a lot of illustrations and white space, which make it easy to read and to find what you're looking for quickly. I'm also impressed by what a great value the game is. It can often be found somewhere in the neighborhood of $20, and the amount of replayability is high. It's a terrific value. Is there anything I don't like? Well, I suppose that cheap price point cuts both ways. The game's components are as cheap as they come, light cardboard and slightly flimsy. I don't expect metal tokens or heavy plastic minis for a $20 price point, but that doesn't stop me from feeling a little underwhelmed by most of the individual pieces. But that's the only very minor gripe I have about Jaws. It's a great game for the whole family, even when it's not beach season. Thanks for watching. This is Joe, reminding you that I can do anything. I'm the Chief of Police.